Hi, I'm Carolina Pichardo. I am part of the Caribbean Climate Justice Journalism Fellowship. I am a journalist from the Dominican Republic, and I'm going to share my story for the Caribbean Climate Calabash podcast. I remember when I was a child, back in 2007, 2006, I was really happy and glad whenever the Ministry of Education canceled classes, because most of the time were due to rain. And in my little brain, I didn't realize how a rain could be that dangerous, so the government could take those kind of measures. I was just happy because I was able to stay at home longer, to sleep better, to play with my brothers, to watch TV, and to be a kid at home. Until I started to see a lot of footage on TV because the Noel storm was affecting the Dominican Republic. By the time, I didn't know how dangerous it was, but now as a journalist, I know that it killed more than 80 people. 15 years later, while working as a reporter with Listín Diario, I had the chance to travel to San Francisco de Macorís to see how Hurricane Maria was affecting communities. And it was the first time that I saw with my eyes how devastating could be one of these disasters. Houses were destroyed. People lost almost everything but their lives. Years later, now I'm part of the Caribbean Climate Justice Fellowship, and I started to realize what was climate justice. Now I have covered some stories that tells how farmers in the Dominican Republic, which is a small community that is not that mentioned in newspapers, have been really affected by the effects of heavy rains and floods. People were expecting that rain. The capital was completely flooded. And these farmers, which weren't prepared for this, lost most of their crops and lots of millions of Dominican pesos. These kind of stories are really emotional for me because I cannot realize, I cannot imagine how they can feel when they put all their efforts on one project and in 1 day or 2 days, it is completely destroyed by the nature. Now, for this podcast, I'm gonna tell more about these investigations, and I'm really thankful with Climate Tracker for making me learn more about climate justice and to expose these things with communities in the Dominican Republic and the region.
All right, so to our listeners, welcome to another episode of Caribbean Climate Calabash podcast. My name is Hipolito Novelo. I'm from Belize and I'm a journalism mentor for Climate Tracker Caribbean. Our guest today hails from the beautiful Dominican Republic. Her name is Carolina Pichardo. She's an award-winning investigative reporter from the Dominican Republic. Currently, she serves as an investigative editor at the oldest newspaper in the DR, Listín Diario. She is also a Chevening and Emerging Media Leaders Program alum and has experience working with the BBC, USA Today, and the Washington Post. She's an avid fan of traveling, reading, and guess what? She is a Swiftie.
Yeah.
Welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, Polita. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm Swifty. I love her.
You love Taylor Swift. Wow.
Yeah, I do
haven't
love
met
her.
someone else in Belize who has told me they don't enjoy her music. She has fans all over the world. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Unfortunately, she couldn't come to the Caribbean, but hopefully in the future we will be able to see her.
Hopefully in the future. I think a lot of Caribbean people would really enjoy that.
Yeah, of course.
I know this is a cliche question, but how is the weather there?
Oh my God, Hipolito. The weather is so hot. I'm at work right now. We have air conditioning, but I'm sweating here. And it's been horrible lately. You cannot even walk 5 minutes because you're all sweat. you cannot even sleep at night because you turn on the fan or the air conditioner and you sweat. You take a shower, and 5 minutes after that, you're sweating. It's like, oh my God. It's like even the water from the shower comes hot. So it's been crazy right now. And it's September. Like, we shouldn't be that hot right now.
Yeah, for me, whenever, because I leave at work in the morning, return like in the evening, and usually I would give my pets water from the pipe, right? So I would have to wait a couple of minutes because the water that comes out is so hot before the
Mhm.
cool water comes out. This is how hot it's getting. It's so crazy. So
It is crazy. It is crazy. Like, I literally like went outside to buy something like 2 minutes from here, and I was just sweating. Like, oh my God, it's horrible. And the thing is that sometimes it rains a lot, but it's keep like the weather keeps getting hotter and hotter. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
yeah, it's horrible. It's frustrating. It's climate change. I mean, it's undeniable. So, and again, another effects of climate change, as you reported in two of your articles, would have been the increase in floodings and how that affects agriculture. But before we go to your two articles, I want you to explain to us how is it that you identified those stories.
The thing is that in the DR, we have lots of flooding in the past 2 or 3 years. Like during November 2023, we had like a huge flood and more than 30 people died in one day because of floodings. I remember that a bridge, like a part of the bridge, fell down and killed like 9 people in a second. But the thing is that, our big cities are getting flooded and lots of cars went completely damaged because of it. But we don't usually think about agriculture sector, especially since I live in, near the capital. And I was writing some stories related to that, and then saw, oh my God, like we lost a lot of money during the November 23, like huge rain. And in June of this year, we also like lost a lot. And I remember that I saw some stories on Instagram of someone who knows someone, and that person posted like a video from, like recorded with a drone, and it showed like hectares and hectares of crops that were completely damaged because of the floods. And since this problem is not well reported in the Dominican Republic, it's not like the most common thing to report here, I decided to start writing about that and investigating about that. And it was completely shocking because this is something that, like, we basically need agriculture in the Dominican Republic. We have like really important products like plantains, which is like our favorite dish in the Dominican Republic. But we also have lettuce and avocado, etc. And because of the flooding, like most of these foods get like more pricey. But we don't usually cover that side of story, like how the floods and climate change and even the heat can affect agriculture sector as well.
So okay, so, yeah. So with that, I mean, like you mentioned, it was shocking. Um, I know as journalists, we don't let our feelings or emotions interfere in terms of how we write. We can't be biased. We have to write what's happening. But at any point, talking to the interviewees, you felt you felt sad for them. What was the feeling you felt? I guess seeing the devastation and the losses these individuals were experiencing.
Yeah, the thing is that, like, for my case, I wasn't able to go in person to their area because most of them live in the countryside. But I managed to have access to their contacts, and even though I couldn't see their faces, or like not even also like I called them or wrote them on WhatsApp, it's like their feeling was frustration because they were saying that the government of the Dominican Republic didn't help them at all. So they invest a lot of money on these crops, and they lost most of this in seconds, because there wasn't any measure by the government. So, even though we are journalists and we are not supposed to feel any kind of, like feel sad or happy or anything. Like, I need to be biased, but in those cases I felt really bad because they literally lost millions of Dominican pesos, all their crops, and the only thing that they had is to continue doing it because, you know, it's their business at the end of the day. And yeah, it felt like really frustrating, especially a case that I know that this is a young person. He's like 25 years old, and he started to invest in this business, in the agriculture. And seeing that person like starting this project and, being excited for it, and then in 5 seconds seeing like everything is destroyed, and then in the next month seeing that everything is completely worse. I don't know if you remember, Hipolito, that I mentioned this person in the first article, and he told me, you know what, I'm sure that in the next month we're gonna have something even worse. And that literally happened. So I needed to interview him again, and he told me that it was worse and that he lost most of his crops. But unfortunately, he needed to continue doing the business.
Your first article, which was published in May, and the title of it is "How Are Farmers in the Dominican Republic Responding to the Flood Damages?" And again, you interview them. How were they responding at that time to the destruction caused by flooding?
Basically, like they were just resilient about it, and they were trying to, move forward with it. But at the end of the day, just like keep going on with it. Like, they sometimes changes the dates of cultivating these products or fruits or vegetables, but like they were basically resilient. And it's like they basically told me that some of them were trying to do even hydroponics. I interviewed someone who does hydroponics in the Dominican Republic, but I did it for the TikTok. And he started to do this because he knew how climate change is affecting the Dominican Republic and the region. And this is like one of the best ways to basically save its crops and save money and, make this business profitable. So yeah, it's really sad that, even though they want to do many things, they don't have the budget or the support from the government. But as I said before, they cannot stop doing it because, it's their jobs. And, it's like they basically do this for generations. And yeah, like they don't have any choice.
Yeah, it's their livelihood. You reported, you spoke to Luis Campana, right? And
Yeah.
you reported that he's been harvesting peppers for about 7 years in Rancho Arriba in San Jose de Ocoa, right? So his father started a business, and as you mentioned, it's a generational thing. He lost, I think you reported 48,000 pepper plants in the floodings.
Mm-hmm.
And when you heard that, what was your reaction? Because as you mentioned, this is their livelihoods. These are everything they have.
Imagine, like, I cannot even explain how I felt because it's devastating to, as I said, like to lose all those crops in seconds or, in a day, especially because it takes time to, to do this process. And, I felt really bad because he said, like, I even need to pay this money to other people who has been helping me, and it's not their fault, so I need to do it. And at the end of the day, it's not only Luis' problems, it's the countries, because this affects food security. And sometimes we just say, oh my God, everything is so expensive lately. What the government is doing, like inflation, whatever. But the thing is that due to this climate change and these floodings and this heat and whatever, when these fruits get damaged or get flooded, it's like they need to produce it again. And, it's a double cost for the farmer and for the government and for everything. So sometimes this is an angle that we don't usually think about. But, it's like the thing is that, of course, these fruits will be continuing like sold in supermarkets, but at the end of the day, farmers won't be able to recover their money and their time.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I keep telling people this: climate change affects every single thing. And with Climate Tracker, with our Caribbean Climate Justice Fellowship, we've managed to highlight how climate change affects everything. In your story, the increase in flooding affects. Okay, let's say you spoke to one of the farmers, and as you mentioned, it's not only him. It's a lot of farmers being affected. Now, if you have thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of crops being destroyed, then as you mentioned, that affects the food security of a country. It affects the agriculture industry. It affects the national GDP. It affects the livelihoods. It affects farmers. It affects vendors. Because of this, you might pay more for a pepper or for tomato or for lettuce, right? So there is a chain effect. And I'm glad that you highlighted that. I'm glad that you mentioned or reported on that these farmers, they need help, especially for the government. I mean, the government is there to do a job, and basically is to look out for their citizens. In your other story, it's an update. You mentioned, as you mentioned, Campana had said he expects it to get worse, and unfortunately, it got worse. So the bit of hope, I can't even imagine the bit of hope he had in recovering anything was flooded away. Talk to us about the second article.
Oh my God, yes. Yes, I spoke to this person. I have this person on WhatsApp. And when I saw like the drone footage that he recorded for his account, I was like, oh my God, this just happened. Because, since I live in the capital, it rained a lot during June. Like it was raining like hurricane rain, like it was huge. But it's like since I'm here, I'm like, okay, maybe in the countryside it's not that worse, but it was worse. And when I spoke to this person, he just literally told me like, Carlina, do you remember that I told you that this was going to get worse? It got worse. I lost like 2 million Dominican pesos, which is a lot in dollars as well. And like I don't even know what to do. Because he basically said that since there was a lot of waste in the area, the government wasn't cleaning it. So, it was more, it was easier to the area to get flooded. So after this, like days after that, he literally he used like a huge truck and cleaned the area. So, it's not happening again. But it's like he took measures for himself because the government didn't help him. And I felt really sad because he said like, oh my God, I need to call like markets and my clients again, and see like how this can be fixed, because most of these crops were even sold before finishing the process. So for him it was really frustrating.
And does he have children, wife?
No, this person, this is like the young one, the youngest one. He has like 25 years old, so he doesn't have like a family, but maybe his father was starting the business, and this is part of the family heritage. But in his case, he doesn't have a family. But Luis Campana, he has a family. Like he has like 3 kids and a wife and everyone. However, it's like even though you're by yourself in life or living with your mother, it's like you invest the money and you're the one who's losing it.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's terrible.
The devastation, again, we might think about Luis Campana and the gentleman you spoke about, but they do have dependents. They do have a family that depend on what they do. So it's not only one person be affected, it's a whole family, a whole family, a whole system. Because if the family can't spend any money, that affects the economy. And again, climate change affects everything.
Like even mental health.
I mean, I can't. One of my worst fears, Carolina, that I would leave, knock on wood, I would leave my iron on and I go to work and then my house catches on fire. And I lose everything, because this is where I have everything. Imagine losing everything. I have no idea what I would know. Luis Campana and the younger gentleman. Flooding wiped out everything they had, everything they worked for. The plans they had for the monies that they would have collected. The plans that they had for the future, gone, went, disappeared. that does something to your mental health. Did he speak to you about that? How he felt mentally?
Like he felt frustrated. The youngest person, he was frustrated, especially because he knew that will happen, and he, like, according to him, he even went to the Ministry of Environment in his city, and he spoke to authorities there and told him, "Oh my God, like this can happen. Can you please clean the area? Because if this happens, like I'm completely lost." And they didn't do anything. So he felt like mad and like frustrated because at the end of the day he couldn't do anything. So I cannot even imagine how a person can survive mentally, like going through this situation. And even though they didn't lose their lives or like anything important, like health or anything, but at the end of the day they invested millions of Dominican pesos and time and workers that have worked on the crop as well. So it's not that easy to just recover from that. To say, okay, let's start again, and that's it. No, it's not that easy because even crops have different seasons. So it's not like, okay, it's damaged, let me just do it again. No, maybe you need to wait for a year and you need to recover the area as well because it's flooded. So it's not just like, oh my God, let me just start and everything will work out.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way, especially for you interviewed Juan Diego Gomez Quesada. For him,
this is like the young one, yeah.
the younger one, Juan Diego Gomez Quesada. So, and he had mentioned to you, and you reported that just for June, I believe he lost about let's see, about 50,000 US dollars. That's about 3 million Dominican pesos, right? And that's a lot of money for anyone. For me, it's a lot of money.
Like, I haven't seen that money together in my life.
Right? And that's the thing, because for us, for the small people on the streets like Gomez Quesada, $50,000 US is a lot of money. Maybe for the politicians and the policymakers, it's not that much, so they won't care to do anything or to protect it. But it is a lot of money, and it's unfortunate that they go through this. And it's unfortunate that, as you mentioned, he went to the ministry. So, okay, he foresaw what's going to happen. This is going to happen. Let's stop, or let's at least reduce the impact of it, right? And they did nothing. And they did nothing. It's really sad. It's really unfortunate. If 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 when people reading these two stories, what would you want them to take away from them?
I think that the main point of these stories is to highlight what happens to these communities, because as I said at the beginning, the floods of course affect the big cities, and even our houses can get flooded, whatever, but we don't usually think about people that live in livelihoods, like farmers, or like even schools that get flooded, like these communities that these floods like literally affect their lives. And I want people to know how this can also affect food security in the country. That if the crops get damaged, get flooded, you basically need to do it again. And to do it again, you need to invest money. And to invest money, you need to put all the products like in a higher price. So I think it's really important to see this point of view, to be more aware of what we do. Like, don't throw bottles on the street. Like, don't throw any waste on the street. Be mindful. Be really demure as well. But like, be conscious of what you're doing, because just a little action that you take, it can change everything. So I think it's really important to think that way as well, and to make other reporters, not only in the Dominican Republic but in the Caribbean and the world, anyone who's reading these stories, to make them write about it so more people know what's going on in their countries as well, and to highlight them.
You also mentioned that some of them are looking at aquaponics, right?
Yeah.
Is that a way to go to avoid this? Because you were mentioning what can they do to just start over and over and over. At one point, they'll get tired because they'll be losing money. what other options do they have?
Like I spoke with Rafael Peña, who is doing hydroponics in the Dominican Republic. To be honest, like I didn't know much about hydroponics. I literally knew about it like 2 months ago, and he told me it's a good way to save money, to save water, and to make these crops like last longer since it's not exposed, with climate change or rain or floods. So I think it could be good to implement this more often. However, as far as I know, the government is not investing in this, which I don't know why, but I think they should invest because at the end of the day, I know that the farmers really like they lose a lot of money because of it and products and stuff, but the government also lost a lot of things because you know that these products are usually imported to other countries, especially like plantains, and cacao and stuff like that. So if we continue losing money, it's like it's gonna affect the economy as well.
Yeah, and then your third story is still related to agriculture and crops, but you
Yeah.
reporting it from a totally different angle. And I particularly enjoyed reading this story because it's everywhere in the Caribbean, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see it in our market as well. And I think people don't realize what's happening or what's causing it. Your story, the third story, had to deal with how the heat affects fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
What sparked that idea? Is it that you went to market, you saw it, and something clicked?
That basically came to my mind because I'm Dominican and I don't have a car, so I need to walk. And even walking 5 minutes is completely, oh my god, it's like I'm really sweating, like I'm just crazy. I just want to get inside an air conditioning place. So I thought one day, like, if this is me, who is like, I'm a human being that can go to the air conditioner, who can take a shower, whatever. But what can happen to a fruit or vegetable that is completely exposed to the heat? Like during the summer, we had like 35 degrees, which is crazy. And the heat and the sun felt like I was in hell. So um, we don't have like a lot of like covered markets in the Dominican Republic. Like most of the people, like vendors, sell these products on the street, like on bicycles or just on markets. And I decided to go to the main public market in the capital, and it was like I said, like vendors were telling me that the tomatoes, the peppers, the avocados, the mangoes, like those things were completely damaged in hours. And I remember the story of a person that he told me that he basically threw away 60 boxes of banana in one day because they got damaged because of the heat. Imagine like imagine like throwing away 60 boxes of bananas. That's a lot of money. And they told me as well that sometimes they even were damaged from the beginning because the heat also affects the crops. And it's not only like, oh my god, in the market affects directly the product, but from there it affects them. So, and most of them were like, okay, I cannot do anything. If it gets damaged, I can sell them in a lower price. But others like used to put them like in like like under an umbrella or something to cover them from the sun. But at the end of the day, like those kind of measures weren't really effective, I think.
Yeah, you spoke to Ramon Maria Jimenez. He's the one who had to discard about 60 boxes of bananas. And that's approximately 12,000 to 13,000 bananas. That's a lot of bananas.
A lot of bananas.
So, I mean, to make that decision to say, you know what, what I saw as profit in these bananas, they've basically turned into garbage because you just throw them away. I mean, he must have been heartbroken, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
he
know.
was. He was like, he even when I interviewed him, he gave me like 10 bananas. Like, if you want them, take them.
Take
Because
them. And right. So what can you, because you don't want to, do not want to discard them and throw them. You might as well give them out if you can't sell them. But man,
yeah,
I it's tough. It's tough. It's tough.
and you know what's ridiculous that I think I didn't wrote for the story is that the market is, it's like a wasteland. And whenever these fruits or vegetables or whatever gets damaged, they put them like in a corner. Imagine like all the bananas or the lettuce, like everything that is damaged is in a corner. And I saw a woman, she was like 60 years old, and she was literally like taking that lettuce from the waste. She was like taking lettuce, and checking it if it was good. And to be honest, like I didn't know if that was for selling them or for taking it, at home. And that was like so devastating because at the end of the day, like there are people who cannot afford these fruits or these vegetables, and they go to these markets. So because these vendors just throw them away in the same market, and that was really devastating and it was disgusting because imagine that they sell it again. That really can damage our health.
It's it's hard to see um people with less privileges, people with
Mm-hmm.
less, I don't know, opportunities, the less
Mm-hmm.
fortunate. It's difficult. I've seen that in Belize too as well. People digging out of garbage to find something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard work. It's difficult.
Yeah, it
We
is
have a couple of
difficult.
more minutes left, Carolina. So last question before I leave you. You had mentioned that you are hoping that reporters from across the Caribbean would continue reporting in stories like this, right? So why and what advice would you give them?
I advise them to kind of brainstorm of which other articles they can write based on things like agriculture being affected by flooding, and to see their surroundings as well, like to ask people to go online to watch TikTok and to see like, okay, this is really affecting communities, and to basically ask them uh, to have these sources. I call like many ministries, like the Ministry of Agriculture. But since I'm a journalist, I ask people from the newsroom as well to help me to find these contacts. And they are, most of the time, these people are really open to talk because they are the ones who are affected by the floods and climate change. So I will recommend them to just find a way to do this kind of stories, and if they can do it in person, it will be better. Unfortunately, as I said, I live near the capital, so for me it could be like quite difficult to move like 5 hours from here. But I will recommend it to dedicate more time to this kind of reporting because it's really important, and to do a lot of footage. So this is like a really call to action, so people can know how this affects farmers in the Dominican Republic or in any country.
Yeah, you're totally right, and I totally agree with you. So now to our listeners, what we will do now, we will have Carolina sing her favorite Taylor Swift song. Go ahead, Carolina.
Oh my God. This is, I feel like I don't have a favorite. So for me, it will be, why did you do that? Like, this
Yeah,
song wouldn't do that. This
you
song
have to
wouldn't
sing
do
it.
that.
I mean, you're not a Swiftie if you can't even sing two lines.
No, I can sing two lines, but I'm thinking. Okay, so my favorite song right now is The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. And he said, I know, I'm so nervous. He says, like, were you sent by someone who wanted me dead? Did you sleep with a gun underneath our bed? Were you writing a book where you sleep yourself spy? If 50 years old, it's busy classified.
Your
It's
coworkers are
all
watching you.
confessed. Yeah, like what's going on? Like, are you working?
Okay, ¿qué hace esta loca, dicen?
Ella está loca.
Esta loca, dice. But Carolina, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending
Thank
time
you.
with us for this podcast. For those listening, if you want to read more about Carolina's stories, you can find it at climatetrackercaribbean.org. That is climatetrackercaribbean.org for her stories on climate change, on the agricultural sector, on the foods and vegetables in a market in DR. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We now have a TikTok and YouTube. And if you like this podcast, give it a thumbs up and share it. So until next time, bye everyone. Bye Carolina. Thank you so much.
Bye bye. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye bye.